the president's message to union workers, rail workers across the country, who backed the president, who helped him get elected, believed that he was standing with them, and who feel that he has betrayed them?
Look, the president, as you know, has been called by unions and labor leaders as a pro-union president, and he takes that very seriously. He is the most pro-union president in history, and he's worked tirelessly to secure victories for unions and for workers since he was first elected to the Senate. So this is when it comes to labor, when it comes to union, this is something that he has worked towards and making sure that he delivers for what he called yesterday. If you listen to him during his Michigan statement, he said they were the backbone. They build our middle class, right? They were the best workers that we have in this country. And so, as a proud pro-union president, he's reluctant to override the ratifications procedures of individual unions, right? We have to remember there were 12 unions involved in this when the tentative agreement was done. When that agreement came out, it was praised. We received praise from rail unions and from folks and from the companies as well. And once that agreement came to fruition, because of the work that this president did on September 15th, there was a cooling period, and it was ratified by eight eight unions of the 12. And so, look, we have to remember there are really good pieces in this deal. There's a 24% pay raise and a $5,000 bonus. No changes in co-pays, deductibles, or co-insurance cost. Some time off for routine, preventive, and emergency medical care, and protecting the two-man crew. This is a deal that has a lot of benefits. But again, he wants to make sure that we avert a shutdown that would be detrimental to our economy.
Is the administration still engaged with the rail companies, the unions, in the event to sort of keep talks going in the event that the Senate is either unable to get this passed or maybe is delayed in getting this passed?
So look, we are confident and we are going to continue to push to get this done. The president is going to continue, and his team is going to continue to work Congress to make sure that we avert a rail shutdown. As we know, it will have catastrophic effects, impacts to our economy. So we're going to stay on track there. Yes, is our administration continuing to having those conversations? I laid out Walsh has been talking to unions for the past several months. That continues. I've talked about Secretary Buttigieg, Department of Transportation, talking to the companies. That will continue, and also Secretary Vilsack is doing his part with the agriculture sectors. So those conversations are always going to continue. But right now, our priority is working with Congress. The president has talked to the four leaders, as you know, yesterday about this particular issue. He's going to continue to talk to congressional members. Our team is going to continue to work on that to make sure that we avert this, make sure we put legislation forward that averts this rail shutdown.
But just to clarify, there are sort of ongoing negotiations between the unions and the rail companies.
I mean, look, I can't speak for the unions and the rail companies. That is, they're going to have their conversations. I'm not speaking for them. I'm speaking for the president and what he's trying to do for the American people, and is to avert a rail shutdown.
I want to follow up on the rail issue. Senator Sanders and about a dozen other Democratic senators released a statement earlier today essentially saying that President Biden did well in the initial negotiations, but Congress should do better. They called out the rail industry specifically for making record profits of more than $20 billion over the past 3 quarters, and essentially said that they should use some of those profits to put it back towards their workers and make sure their workers have paid sick leave. I wonder what the president makes of those comments. We've heard the president before call out industry, call out the oil and gas industry for making record profits and not putting that back towards consumers. Does he feel the same way about the rail industry?
I want to be very clear here. The temporary agreement that the president was able to secure in September, on September 15th, as you know, that's when we announced it, had some real wins for workers. It really did. Again, the concessions he secured for workers included a 24% pay raise and a $5,000 bonus, no changes in copay, deductibles, or co-insurance cost for the operating crafts, some time off for routine, preventative, and emergency medical care, and protecting the two-man crew. The victories he helped secure for workers is why the deal was ratified. It was ratified by 8 of the 12 unions. And we have to remember, right, if we were to be in a rail shutdown, it will hurt the very families that we're talking about, that you're asking me about, right? It would hurt the union families as well, and union workers. And so, he was asked to get involved in July. He did. He put together the Presidential Emergency Board, and he put the full, the fullness of the full weight of the administration to get to this temporary agreement. And again, I just listed out some real concrete gains that we saw because of the president's involvement.
This message from Democrats that there's corporate greed involved, and that's one of the reasons why they can't have an agreement here. The president doesn't agree that the rail industry.
What I am saying is that the president was able to put together a temporary agreement that prevented a downturn, a disruption in our economy that would have hurt all families. And there are some really true wins that came out of this agreement because of the work that this president did. But look, I've said this many times, and he has said this many times, he's the president for all Americans, right? And it is important that we avert a rail shutdown. It is unacceptable. It would hurt farms. It would hurt jobs. It would hurt communities across the country. And so that is what the president is focused on. How is he going to help all Americans here?
Given the close ties the administration has to the labor movement, have there been conversations maybe behind the scenes kind of explaining the why here, or kind of detailing the decision-making process with the labor movement?
So, I mean, look, and we have said this. I said this the other day. Secretary Walsh has been in touch with the rail union. Secretary Buttigieg has been in touch with the companies. The president has been clearly in touch with congressional leaders in his administration, and Secretary Vilsack has been in close touch with the agriculture sector. But just to give a little bit of a timeline here, the president and his team have been directly engaged in supporting negotiations and averting a shutdown for months now. In July, as you recall, like we've talked about it right here in the briefing room, the unions asked him to constitute a presidential emergency board, a request they made because they know he is indeed a pro-union president, and he did just that. After the PEB, he brought the full weight of his administration to bear to keep the parties at the table and to get employers to make concessions, and they did. So he made it possible for the unions to secure tentative agreements in September that secured a higher pay. I just mentioned 24%, and you've seen that also in the president's statement, and a $5,000 bonus for workers. Those tentative agreements kept our rail system working and prevented a disruption to our economy. And just want to add, there was that cooling off period once that September 15th tentative agreement was made. In that cooling off period, those 12 unions were given the opportunity for them to ratify or vote for that tentative agreement. Again, 8 of them ratified it. That's a majority of the 12, and so we wanted to give the last 2 unions who voted in late November their opportunity to make their voices heard. And so that's kind of how you saw the process the last couple of months. We've been engaged. We've been certainly working with them on coming to this tentative agreement. And now we're at a place where the president has been very clear that we have to avert a rail shutdown, and he's asking Congress to act. He's very pleased by what the Speaker and the leadership was able to do today in the House to move that forward. Mary.
The president released a statement praising the House for passing this bill to avert a shutdown of the rails. He says he wants it on his desk immediately, but he didn't mention this separate bill guaranteeing 7 days of paid sick leave for rail workers. Does the president also back and support this legislation? Does he also want that on his desk?
So I just want to say a couple of things that the president believes that a bill averting a rail strike needs to reach his desk by this weekend. He is very clear about that because we need to protect the American families from a potential devastating effects of a rail shutdown. And we have talked about that numerous times, and the president was really clear about that when he put out his statement earlier this week. The president, of course, he supports paid sick leaves for all Americans, including rail workers, but he does not support any bill or amendment that will delay getting this bill to his desk by this Saturday. And he's been very clear about that. Again, he's a president for all Americans, and he believes that we need to avert this potential shutdown that would have a devastating effect on our economy, a devastating effect on jobs, a devastating effect in our communities across the country and our farms as well.
I just want to go back and clarify on the proposed 7-day paid leave amendment, or standalone that was passed by the House, however it's taken on the Senate. Does the president support that proposal?
So the president, again, believes that it is important to avert a rail strike, and that is what he's focusing on. And he wants to make sure that there's an agreement that's brought to his desk by the weekend to protect American families, to protect jobs, to protect farms, and to protect communities across the country. The president, of course, supports paid sick leave for all Americans and for including rail workers. This is something, as you have seen him over the past almost 2 years, talk about that and try to move forward and making sure in getting paid sick leave. But he understands there are not 60 votes, right? There are not 60 votes in the Senate to make that happen. His number one priority is making sure that we get this done. So he does not support any bill or amendment that will delay a bill that's getting to his desk by Saturday. Okay, April.
Corinne, I want to go back to the rail strike or potential thereof, and I want to drill down on what you continue to say, the hurt. This White House, this administration on the Hill, you guys are rallying the economy as some are concerned about what the first quarter, the end of the first quarter could look like in 2023. Could you qualify and quantify what that hurt looks like? Because you keep talking about the union people and their families, but it's broader than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me break it down exactly what this could look like. It would have a rail shutdown, would have a grinding effect on our economy to halt and touch the lives of nearly every family across the country. Even in the days before a rail stoppage, serious disruptions will begin to occur. A couple of examples here. By Friday, Class 1 railroads will likely begin to notify their customers of the wind down process. Just the announcement would disrupt supply chains as companies begin to reschedule shipments from rail to truck. As soon as this weekend, Class 1 railroads may begin to refuse to transport hazardous materials like chemicals necessary to treat drinking water and wastewater. Oil and gas refineries unable to ship out hazardous byproducts will stop producing diesel and gasoline, creating supply constraints. The auto sector could also be disrupted as soon as this weekend as well. Last time around, the railroads began refusing to transport automobiles about a week ahead of the shutdown deadline. So again, Congress must get a bill to the president's desk this weekend to protect families and from these potential devastating impacts. So this is what we're talking about. These are real life, changes and impacts that we can see here.
So with that said, thank you for all that. Didn't expect you to have it. Thank you. But at the end of the day, you are fighting inflation. This White House is fighting inflation. And it sounds like the numbers will go up again. What is in place? What are you guys working on in case there is a strike? In understanding those numbers and all the things that you qualified and quantified, what is in place to cushion the American taxpayers' pocketbook or the American consumer's pocketbook with this knowledge that you have?
So let me just on inflation for a second, and it's I do want to point out that we've seen in recent months, which is inflation slowing in the third quarter compared to first and second quarters. So that's good news. And the last CPI, we've seen prices fall for used cars, apparel, inflation moderation for housing, food, and services. All welcome news as we head into the holidays. So we have seen that in the data points in the past several months. So that's important to note. And as I've said many times, when it comes to the president's economic plan, inflation is lowering costs and dealing with inflation, fighting inflation is the president's number one priority. At the beginning of the briefing, I laid out gas prices, how much it's fallen. The average, the gas price that you'll see is about $2.99. It's gone down by more than $1.50 per gallon, and that's because of the work that this president has done with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, taking historic action. So that matters as well. We are certainly working towards that. But look, the president is confident that Congress is going to act on this, that we are going to, work to avert a railway shutdown. That's why you saw the House today. He complimented the House, the Speaker, and the leadership to moving the bill forward, and it included Democrats and Republicans, right? So we saw a interest of getting this done across the spectrum. So we're going to continue to work towards that. It's going to go to the Senate next, and the president and his team is going to continue to encourage members to get it done. One last question. Go ahead. The young lady in the back. Go ahead.
Thank you. On the potential rail strike, some representatives today putting blame on the Biden administration, saying that it should have never come to this. What went wrong from the administration's point of view in September?
We don't think anything went wrong. We believe that if you think about the timeline that I laid out, and that what the president and his team has been doing for the past several months, we've been directly involved, engaged in supporting negotiations and averting a shutdown, and we've been doing this for months. And it was because of the president's action back in July. The unions asked him to constitute a presidential emergency board, a request they made, because they knew as a pro-union president, he would be able to get to an agreement, and he did. On September 15th, he came through with a temporary agreement that had an increase in pay by 24%. It had a 5,000 bonus. It has a 5,000 bonus for workers. And let's not forget, when that agreement came out on September 15th, it was lauded and praised by the unions and union leadership. So again, this is a president that has delivered for the union, and he sees himself as a pro-union president. That term has been given to him by labor. And again, what is so important right now is that we need to make sure that we avert a rail shutdown, and that's what the president is calling on Congress to do. This is something that would have a direct effect on those union families. It would have direct effect on communities across the country. It would have an impact on on farms, on jobs, on agriculture, as I just mentioned. So this is incredibly important that we avert this, and that's why the president is calling on Congress to act. Thanks, everybody.